So, you want dynamite darts content? Well, Alex Moss and Burton DeWitt have you covered. Love these guys. For bullseyes, bounce-outs, and darting brilliance, keep it right here. You are listening to the weekly Dartscast. Now, I'm Canadian and often get asked how Canadians call out a maximum, a 180? Well, it sounds something like this. 100, eh? T.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast. I'm Alex Moss and joining me as always, great pleasure to be in the company of darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm doing fairly well, Alex. And for 181 episodes, we've been on a number that maybe we couldn't bust, but some people can. I don't think we're that good that we would expect to bust 181. But since for those episodes you've often asked me what's my favorite way to check out 116 or something, I'm going to turn the tables in celebration of episode 182 and ask, what's the highest number you've ever busted?
Oh, that is a good question. It's been a long time since I've played proper darts in a game situation. I don't know. I don't think I've busted anything over 70 or 80. I think the only times I've busted something is if I've gone for double 8 and hit a double 16 or double 10 hit a double 15. So I don't think mine is as big as some of the ones that we've seen at Ali Pali in the last couple of weeks. What about yourself?
I know I busted something in the 120s once, but I can't recall the exact number. And it was just the last start was completely wild and missed by like 3 segments what I was aiming for. But I can't recall what exactly it was, but it was somewhere in the 120s. Anyway, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay, thank you. One of the many people I think here in the UK, there could be a few of our listeners that are in the same boat that are going to be going from tier 2 to tier 4 after Christmas. So glad that we're going to get the darts back on the 27th. We're back with our second show during these PDC World Championships. We've got a few guests coming up as well that you're going to hear from, but let's get straight into it. We're 2 rounds into Dartsmas now. We're down to the final 32 players to contest for the Silverdale Trophy. What have you made of the first 2 rounds of this PDC World Championship?
It's been a bit of a weird World Championship as we were expecting, but the quality has been there in most of the matches. And, we'll get on to some of the seeds that lost in just a bit. But I think in many ways, what has happened, despite being so weird, also kind of makes sense. We've seen 26 of the 32 seeds go through. And I did say on our last show beforehand, discussing the international players versus the Pro Tour qualifiers, that I thought it would be an abnormally high number of Pro Tour qualifiers winning, partially due to just the matchups being so favorable to the Pro Tour qualifiers, but also due to the fact that the Pro Tour qualifiers would have been playing darts for at least the last few months. We're going to come in better form, and a lot of the international qualifiers didn't have nearly as much competition. We'll hear from one of the few that's still in the field, Danny Baggish in a bit. That part of it made sense. But the thing we didn't discuss and didn't think about was how much of an impact the lockdown would have, and having to just stay in the hotel for day after day once you passed your COVID test would have on the players. And I think that made a big difference. And I think that's why so many seeds, despite the fact that they didn't have a match under their belt already, went through, because they might have only been in the hotel for a day or two, while the player they were going against had just spent 4 or 5 days locked up. And that seemed to show in a lot of the comebacks from 2-0 down and players just falling flat. They might, like Scott Waits yesterday, getting hot out of the gate, but just falling flat late. And I think that had an impact. I think that gave the seeds an advantage that you wouldn't have expected, being that was their first match on. It hasn't subtracted from the quality, and there's been some exciting matches, and there's been 7 last leg deciders. Easily could have been more seeds to fall if darts had just hit the other side of the wire, and it's been a great first 2/3 of the tournament, since 2/3 of the players are out. But I think the environment for COVID has helped the seeds out, and it's going to make it a high-profile last 32. In the end, you're going to end up with most of the best players still competing after Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, we look back to our last show that we did, which was just 3 days into this tournament, and since then we've got to the end of the first round, we've got to the end of the second round. That's 64 games that we've seen so far. There's been 16 sessions across the 9 days. We've had 7 of those 9 days. We've had 2 sessions on those days. So there's been a lot of darts, and really this first half of the tournament, if you like, has been a slog at times. All the games haven't been as high quality as some of the other ones, but we've got down to the last 32 now, and I guess really now there's going to be 2 sprints to the finish line. We're back on the 27th with the third and fourth rounds over 4 days, and then a day break for New Year's Eve, and then we come back on January the 1st, and we've got 3 days to decide the winner, the quarterfinals, semi-finals and finals. So yeah, I mean, looking across this first stage of the tournament, if you like, wherever you look, there's been something that has grabbed your attention. As I say, maybe not all the games have been high quality, but on each day there has been something where you've thought that is something special. There's been some classic moments, even though we haven't had that Ali Pally crowd, which we used to. There's been a lot of great moments so far. We've, of course, had Paul Lim become the second oldest winner in a PDC World Championship, and if he comes back next year and wins a game, he will beat John McGowan's record, who's 67, Paul Lim 66. Some other great moments, of course, as well. Danny Baggish coming through those couple of games, the Scott Waits, Matt Campbell game, the Rob Cross, Dirk van Dijvenbode game, how that finished as well. The game last night when we're talking Nathan Aspinall, Scott Waits, and there's so much more to come, isn't there? We're down to the last 32, but there's still so many games to go to decide who's going to pick up this title. So it's warming up very nicely.
Now, you mentioned that Rob Cross, Dirk van Dijvenbode match, one of only 6 times the seed lost, but a great match indeed. Those 6 seeds to fall, none in the top quarter of the draw, none in the bottom quarter, 4 of them in the second quarter, including, as you mentioned, the 5th seed Rob Cross, and last night the 4th seed Michael Smith going out to Jason Lowe, who also came out firing in that match, 3-1. For Rob Cross and Michael Smith, do you think they should be fearing for their Premier League spots next year?
I think so, and it's hard, isn't it? Because there's so much that we don't know. There's still a lot of uncertainty going into 2021, and I think the PDC put out a article on their website today about Q School that there is the potential, with all the restrictions that we've got at the moment here in the UK, that the dates for that could be pushed further back. I think it's mid-January time, could be pushed further back. So I know they want to put out their first 3 months of the calendar for 2021. That's going to be coming out shortly, we understand. But they've said they're not going to put out the full calendar because, as I say, there is just so much that we don't know about what can and can't happen with regards to crowds, tournaments behind closed doors, everything like that. One of the big things that we usually expect at the start of each year is the Premier League announcement, the players that are going to be in it, and then, of course, getting underway early February time. Well, we're not sure whether that's going to be the case or they're going to push it further back. But with regards to those 2 players, the 2 big players, if you like, that have fallen at the first hurdle in World Championship, Michael Smith, Rob Cross, weren't so long ago we were talking about those 2 after they got to the World Cup final. Is this their best chance as a team to win this World Cup? Well, there is a case for that because they could potentially start slipping down the rankings. Michael Smith was the 4th seed. I think he's down to provisionally 7th at the moment. It's going to take something for him to drop out the top 8. He's got a lot more to defend. Okay, he's missed out on defending that runners-up money from the Worlds 2 years ago. Rob Cross, I think, is the big one. He's got a big year coming up because 2019, 80%, I think it's over 80% of his ranking money is going to have to be defended next year. He's, of course, won 2 major titles in 2019. He'll be defending his World Championship. He's gone out early in the last couple, like Michael Smith. They've had 2 back-to-back second-round exits, and when we think of the players that have come through this year, Jose de Souza, Dimitri Vandenberg, Glenn Durrant, of course, he was a debutant in the Premier League. There are more players that you put in that as potential players that could be selected for that Premier League. And if you're coming into the selection and you've just had a poor result like those 2 have, it doesn't do you very good. But I guess with Rob Cross's case, unless we see a surprise winner or Nathan Aspinall get to a semi-final or a few others get to a final, he should be in that top 4 after the World Championship. And if they carry on the qualifying criteria, the top 4 all guaranteed, then that could just squeeze him in. But if he drops out of that top 4, I think out of those 2, he could be the one that's fearing for his place next year.
I think that definitely is going to be what it comes down to, because Rob Cross hasn't had a Premier League campaign this year. And as you mentioned, next year's a huge one for him, defending a lot of money. That said, he was playing a lot better at the last month or so than he was for most of the year. He really struggled at times and extended times this year, not just getting relegated from the Premier League, because a lot of that came down to he had a very bad week when the season restarted and just didn't get into gear. And if you play 6 matches in 6 days and are having a bad week, it's going to show. And so you can write that off, but that was part of a bad 4 or 5 months for him. He didn't do, even though he improved at the back end, he didn't do anything to get himself into the field. That said, he's still in the top 4, and the only person who can knock him out without making the final is Nathan Aspinall. That said, Nathan Aspinall's never not made the semifinals, and okay, he won't get to play Scott Waits and survive match darts like he has 2 tournaments in a row again over the next few rounds, but he didn't play poorly in that match. He didn't have to go to a last leg decider because he was playing poorly. Scott Waits was playing out of his skin. Nathan Aspinall has dodged his bullet and has every chance to make it 3 semifinals on the spin, which would knock Rob Cross out. And there's other players who could do it by making the finals. James Wade, Dimitri Vandenberg, who I picked to make the finals. And we'll get to how our pre-tournament picks are doing later. We won't rub in whether mine are left or yours are left. But Dimitri Vandenberg's still in, and he would get there with a final. And the interesting thing is, if Dimitri Vandenberg makes the final, who would have thought we would ever be saying this? There would not be an Englishman in the top 4 of the rankings, which would just be almost unthinkable if you went back a decade ago. But Rob Cross, as long as he stays in the top 4, should be there. But Barry Hearn, we had on earlier this year, I should say like a month ago, and he did say that he expects the top 4 criteria to stay. He also thinks that maybe next year they'll go back to 10 players. Who would those 10 players be? Well, Peter Wright, Michael Van Gogh, and Goran Price for sure will be in. If tradition holds, Dimitri Vandenberg, World Match Play Champion, Glenn Durrant, Premier League Champion, I don't even think tradition has to hold. You would not drop the defending Premier League Champion, even with Durrant struggling like he has over the past couple months. And then you have Jose de Sousa as the Grand Slam champion. That's 6 of the 10 spots. Whoever's number 4 will make 7. Let's say Rob Cross holds on. He's 7. I don't think Nathan Aspinall, top 5, even if he drops a couple spots based on what happens. He was the Premier League runner-up. I think he's there. That's 8. That leaves just 2 spots. I think James Wade with 2 finals back to provisional number 6 in the world, could go higher, would get in as well. That's 9. That leaves 1 spot for somebody, whoever does, and that could be someone who does really well in this tournament. Dave Chisnell's had a very good year. Simon Whitlock has had a very good year on TV. But there are other players, no one's talked about Mencer Solovich, but man, has the draw opened up for him if he can get past Gary Anderson in the next round to get all the way to the semifinals. Could that get him back in the Premier League? Probably not, but who knows? Maybe he then goes to the finals and does get back in. And we haven't even talked about Gary Anderson, who, despite being provisional world number 20, you would think would still get in. That doesn't leave any room for Michael Smith to be in next year. And on what he's done this year, he probably shouldn't be. You think he'll be back sometime soon, probably in 2022. But even at 10 people, I don't think there's a spot for Michael Smith anymore for the 2021 Premier League. So it's less fearing for a spot and hoping that someone turns it down, because I just don't see him being in next year.
Well, we shall see. Let's hear from a player that potentially could be in the Premier League next year if he goes all the way and has a big run. He's started well so far. It's the only international qualifier left in the field for this World Championship. Here's our chat with Danny Baggish.
I'm joined today by the North American darts champion and the man who just knocked out the 2-time champion of the world, and that is Danny Baggish. Danny, how are you?
I'm great, guys. I appreciate you guys having me.
Oh, we appreciate you joining us, and it's been a whirlwind 7 days for you, beating Damon, Heta, and Adrian Lewis to reach the last 32 at Ali Pali, the first American to do so in 11 years. How do you reflect on this past week?
Yeah, it's been an unbelievable week. To get the draw that I got with Damon, Heta, probably the top 3 informed players. I know he struggled a little bit, but I had to take advantage of it. Same with Adrian. It's just been a roller coaster of emotions, and I'm happy to be in the last 32.
And we'll get to the last 32 in a bit, but it's been a lot of talk because of what's going on overseas. A lot of the foreign players had to cancel their trips back for Christmas. I'm assuming since the U.S. is a little further away, Florida not as far as Texas, where I am, I assume you would have stayed over regardless?
Yeah, I think we were going to stay over regardless. The stuff that happened with my family kind of made it a little more difficult to make the decision, but we were asked to stay, so it was easy for me in the long run.
Now, we'll come back to Worlds in a bit, but want to go through your start in the game. How did you discover darts? Where did it all start?
When I was about 13 years old, actually I started when I was 11. My father was big into darts, and I used to come home, do my homework, and instead of going out playing basketball and football with my friends, I would hop on the dartboard with my dad in the living room as we watched TV. So I picked it up then, and I got good. So when I was about 13, 14, I won my first soft tip title and kind of just took off from there.
We'll ask about basketball in a bit, 'cause I know you have a very fitting tattoo for darts. I guess we can talk about that now. You have, of course, the Chicago Bulls tattoo, I've noticed, and I think a San Francisco 49ers one. Is the Bulls just because of darts, or are you actually a Bulls fan?
So I'm all over the place. I'm a Bulls fan, a 49ers fan, Atlanta Braves fan. I'm all over the map. But a great story behind that is I have two sisters and a brother, and they're big sports fans. And I was rooting for their teams when I was younger, and they got mad at me because I'm the baby, and they're like, find your own teams to root for. So I picked the best team in the '90s of every sport, and I just became a diehard fan.
I'm originally from Miami, so I won't mention the 1997 NLCS, but
Thanks.
but for those who don't know, my team beat the Braves that year. I'm assuming most of our audience doesn't follow baseball, but we'll come back to Worlds in a bit. And just looking through the records, you competed in the PDC as early as 2007, where your Braves are in Atlanta, and some Players Championship events. What were those early experiences like, being in the PDC, playing against many of the top professionals?
Yeah, that was kind of a kickstart to my dream of wanting to be a professional dart player. Just to see them and their talent and them coming over, and it was unbelievable. And I knew back then I had a lot of time to get where I wanted to be and to progress with my game. So yeah, playing in 2007 against the likes of Bob Anderson, I believe, came over, and Michael Van Gerwen came over, and so forth. It was an eye opener. So that's kind of the time of when I wanted to really push and be a professional.
Now, you mentioned you won your first soft tip title at the age of 13. Before those events, were you playing more soft tip or steel tip, or has it always been a mix of both?
No, I grew up with steel tip. I always preferred steel tip. Soft tip came around the scene seriously around when I was about 13, 14 years old. But no, I grew up with steel tip and always preferred that. Where I'm at now, we don't have steel tip really, so it's all soft tip.
We'll skip ahead a bit. You've won a lot of events in North America over the past decade, but where you really first came to prominence was last year, year and a half ago in Vegas, playing in the World Series events and the North American Championship, where you just so happened to beat a former world finalist, Jeff Smith, in the final. How special of a moment was that for you?
Yeah, it was very special. Everything I worked for, everything that I put into my game, all of the preparation, the mental preparation, it all just showed in that final against Jeff. And to play him and know where I need to be and know how great of a player he is, and to actually win was unbelievable. And that was just one of the greatest moments of my dart career so far.
And so far might be the key word there. Of course, shortly thereafter, you were over to England for the World Masters. We recently had Matt Campbell on the show, who, like you, was handed a contract to sign by the BDO. What do you recall from that day and that experience?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a catch-22 situation for us. It was unfortunate. We kind of didn't know what we wanted to do. We reached out to Tsuyoshi and a couple others, and we just figured if we won that, we were going to be in a situation to where we couldn't play the PDC World Championships, which to me didn't make sense. If no disrespect to the women playing, but it didn't matter if they played both of them, and they're good enough to play in the PDC World Championships. They've shown that. So if they were able to play in both, why couldn't we?
I'm guessing it was a nicer visit a couple months later when you did show up for the PDC Worlds. What was it like playing Ali Pali for the first time on that big stage in front of 3,000 and getting a win on debut?
Oh, yeah, that was. I felt like I had to kind of get my nerves in check by drinking a little bit backstage, but when I hit the stage, I went stone cold sober. I felt like oh my gosh, the crowd, the screaming, the yelling, and just feeling that stage vibrate while you play. It was unbelievable. I didn't settle down until halfway through, or even 3/4 of the way through against Andy Bolton. And to come through and get that win was just overwhelmed with excitement and emotion.
Shortly thereafter, there was a lot of speculation that you would be going to Q School, but you put on Twitter that you weren't going to enter, I guess, this year. What went into that decision?
Oh yeah, so I'm a big family guy. At the time, our son was just 1 year old, and we don't let him just stay with anyone, and we have family that watches him, but unfortunately they couldn't, and the one person that watched him while we traveled to the World Championships couldn't watch him for the whole time I was gone either. So the last minute that we had someone watch our son, she backed out, unfortunately, due to work reasons, and it was a scramble to find someone, and it just was easier for me to say, hey, look, I'll stay home this year. There's always next year, and I'll go next year.
And is that still the plan to go to Q School next month?
Yes, my entry is already paid for. Everything's already booked, and I'll be there. Everything's situated. Not missing this one.
Let's look back through this year. It's obviously been a difficult year with the pandemic. Season was supposed to start in March, but all that got postponed. The CDC finally got some events going in October in Indianapolis to sort the World Cup and World Championship spots. Going into that weekend, how are you feeling about your form?
Yeah, I was a little nervous on whether I was gonna perform like I feel like I should, just because we haven't been traveling and playing in a lot of face-to-face tournaments. So no live tournaments kind of is way different than online tournaments. So that first event going in, I was kind of skeptical about how I was gonna play, and just had to really bear down and throw the darts and see how it was gonna go.
And, well, it went well enough because you got back to the World Championships just winning 3 of the 4 events. What were with everything going on, you mentioned obviously not knowing what your form was, but what were the main challenges you faced to make sure you could even get over to the UK to compete in the World Championships?
There was really no challenges. Everything was clicking and falling into place. It seems like everything that went south before last year, everything was just falling into place this year for me, even though, with all this COVID stuff. But yeah, everything was going great. And by myself and my family coming over with me, and everything just went so smooth, and coming in, my form was good, and I was actually looking forward to it. It was more so about business this time than actually just being excited to be here.
Well, let's talk about that business. First match was against Damon Heta, who you mentioned was one of the 3 or 4 unseeded players who were probably in the best form coming in and went to a last leg decider. How did you hold yourself together to get over the line in that match?
Yeah, I really had to keep my composure there, but I still feel like I pressed a little bit. I got into his rhythm after the second set when I went up 2-0 and started playing a little faster, and I felt myself doing that afterwards. I can see because I go back and watch it. But yeah, throwing that last dart after he missed the double 20 for the 40 checkout. Well, yeah, 96 left, and he just missed it and wired it. I kind of took a deep breath and said, "You have to hit it now. This is your chance to make a name for yourself again." And it went in.
And then, of course, after that went in, you had another chance to make a name for yourself going against the 2-time champion of the world, back-to-back Adrian Lewis. Again, a good start and had to hold off a comeback. Was beating him would you say, the best moment of your career so far?
Yeah, he's Adrian Lewis, and he's a 2-time world champion for a reason. Even though he wasn't on form right away, he at any point in time can show glimpses or just throw the way he's supposed to. It's crazy because in the practice room prior, right before we took the stage, we were warming up, and it seemed like every time I looked over, he was hitting a 180. And I was mentally like, okay, you're going to have to bring your A game, A+ game to beat Adrian Lewis. So he came out a little flat. I took advantage of it, and I came through. Yeah, biggest win of my career to be the 2-time world champion.
So a couple more questions now. Next up, on Monday night, right after Christmas, you're going against Glenn Durrant. How much are you relishing the chance to take on another former world champion on the Ali Pali stage?
Yeah, I think 2-time BDO world champion, current Premier League champion. It's an honor. Just to be in the 3rd round and share the stage with Glenn is unbelievable. Fellow Target player, and I can't wait. I feel like I'm here for a reason. I feel like if I continue to play my game, my pace, and hit the doubles at a good percentage, you might be seeing me in the 4th round.
We'll wish you luck in that. But one last question. It feels like North American darts, after a long time in the doldrums, is finally heading one way. Jeff Smith on the PDC Tour, Matt Campbell, impressive. Danny Lauby, too. What's the next step for you and fellow North Americans to keep it progressing?
Yeah, I've said this multiple times with a lot of people. What the CDC is doing is unbelievable to get all of us prepared for the play of overseas competition and to play all these PDC players. We need to be playing each other every weekend, or at least 1-2 weekends a month, like the CDC is doing. And it's hats off to them. So we're getting prepared. We're all doing the right things now, and I don't see why 5 to 7 of us can't continue to compete over here, get our Q card, and go to Q school and get the tour card and show North America is back.
Well, Danny, best of luck this upcoming week and making sure that North America is back.
You got it. Thank you, guys.
Support for the weekly Dartscast is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ADONIS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code ADONIS. Your balls will thank you. Now, if you excuse me.
Thanks again to Danny for joining us. Now let's talk about the 6 non-seeds, including Danny Baggish, that have made it through to the post-Christmas action in this World Championship. Who has most impressed you from the non-seeds left in at Ali Pali?
Well, before I answer that, I'm going to issue a self-correction while we were chatting in between segments. I noticed that it wasn't that long ago that there were no Englishmen in the top 4. Just 3 years ago, before Rob Cross won the World Championship, the top 5 seeds were Michael Van Gerwen, Peter Wright, Gary Anderson, Daryl Gurney, and Mensur Suljovic at the World Championship. So it has happened before, but I still stand by who would have thought 10 years ago that we would see that day. But to answer the question of the 6 unseeded players, you have to start with Danny Baggish. I don't see how you could start anywhere else. He's the only of the international qualifiers still in the field, and he had to survive what was not an easy draw, probably one of the toughest, and you just heard from him, he said one of the 3 toughest draws he could have had in the first round in Damon Heta, and I don't think you can disagree with that. Winner of a Pro Tour event this year, winner of a TV event in the PDC just a year and a half ago. And okay, Damon Heta really struggled early in that match. Didn't seem like himself. Once he started punching back, Danny Baggish stayed with him and got over the line and then beat Adrian Lewis and pummeled Adrian Lewis. Again, also Adrian Lewis did not look like himself early in that match. He was awful in the first set. But even as Adrian Lewis lifted his game, so did Danny Baggish. Danny Baggish brought his average up almost to the mid-90s in the end and lifted his game with Adrian Lewis, withstood a short rally from him in the third set where Adrian Lewis was unplayable. But Adrian Lewis dropped back to a good level, and Danny Baggish just kept on going. Very impressive for who is the least experienced of these 6 players, at least at the PDC level. But you also have to throw Kim Huybrechts. You put out a tweet on our Twitter about the players who have averaged over 100 in their first 2 matches at a World Championship all time, and every single name on that list has won a world title, except for Kim Huybrechts, who just did it, averaging 104 against the Chinese qualifier, Di Zhuang, and then averaging over 100 against Ian White, who yet again averaged over 100 and lost in the first round, as Kim Huybrechts made it through. And also potential for him to go further. He has a Ryan Searle in the next match, and if Kim Huybrechts is averaging over 100, this is a chance to get back to the last 16 and move closer to a return to the top 32, which didn't seem likely that long ago, as Kim Huybrechts looked like he was dropping fast. Now he's on the rise again. Both of them really were impressive, but you can make an argument all 6 of the unseeded players who have made it through have been impressive over their matches. Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right. You can make an argument for all 6, and just starting with Kim Huybrechts, as you say there, he's kicked off the tournament with back-to-back 100-plus averages. The list on there, he's the only one that hasn't won a World Championship, so the signs are good for him, but we could see a few others add their name to that list. You've got Simon Whitlock, Christoph Ratajski, Dimitri van den Berg. They've all posted 100-plus averages in their first game. They came into the second round. So if they do it again, they'll be adding themselves to the list. So that list could grow quite quickly next week or end of this week, start of next week. I'll give a few mention to the other players. Jason Lowe, he was the last game that we've seen, of course, last night against Michael Smith, and first game against Dmitry Gorbanov, who really enjoyed himself on that walk-on. It's got to be said, he was a bit of a character, but 86 average for that first game, got over the line, and then puts 10 points on the average and looked very good against Michael Smith. Okay, Michael Smith didn't play anywhere near the level we expect from him, but still, his debut at Ali Pali, he's turned up and put in a really solid performance. It was a little bit shaky towards the end. Michael was coming back at him, but he got over the line and he showed a lot of experience that maybe we didn't expect him to have, but under that pressure, he was able to get over the line, and he's one of those underrated players. He's now into the top 64 in his first year with a tour card. As he said in his interviews, it was a flip of a coin whether he was going to go to Q School or not this year, and I'm guessing he's glad he did because he got that tour card. We saw glimpses of him on TV this year, the UK Open. He pushed Michael van Gerwen to a deciding leg 10-9. Not many people can do that in their first year, first game on TV. So he's got a lot of potential, I think, going forward. Danny Baggish, as you mentioned, got to give him full credit for what he's been able to do. It's the only international qualifier to make that last 32. And I guess really the few others that we've seen, they've all got previous, haven't they? Dirk van Dijvenbode, we've seen him get to a TV final this year. Ryan Searle, we've seen him perform well at Ali Pali before. Kim Huybrechts, as we mentioned. Adam Hunt's probably the only one aside from that we haven't seen him do it too much on TV. Grand Slam last month, getting through to the last 16, but very good win against Lisa Ashton. The game against Jamie Hughes didn't turn up, did he? 75 average, but still take nothing away from Adam Hunt. You've still got to put in that performance, get over the line, and he did very comfortably, and he's into the last 32 as well.
Now you'll get to return the favor in a bit when we get to the picks from last week and picks going forward, but I'll start now by pointing out that for the second year running, it's not even Christmas, and yet you have to predict a new winner of the World Championship because your pick has gone at the first hurdle. Who are you tipping now?
Yeah, just got to apologise to Michael Smith and anyone listening who supports Michael Smith, because when you listen to our preview show, you'd have all been ripping up your betting slips or you're taking down all your Michael Smith bunting down because I backed him to win the World Championship 2 years in a row now, and he's gone out at the first hurdle, the second round for him, which it's a shame for him, and we always say it's only a matter of time before he wins that big title, but it's not going to be on this occasion for him, unfortunately. Who am I going to go with instead? Well, I'm going to stick with Gerwyn Price to get to the final. That was a pick that he's still going, although he did have a bit of a scare against Jamie Lewis in his game, and I've got to say it was good to see Jamie Lewis push one of those top players again. Good signs for him going forward. I think I'm going to play it safe now because we've only seen him play once so far. I've only seen all these top players play once so far, but the man who's top of that averages list, Michael van Gerwen, it was a big performance from him. And I guess watching it didn't really look like a 108, almost 109 average. But you look at the stats, and he was pushed in that first game by Ryan Murray, who looked very good. But he's got over the line, and okay, it's been a bit difficult for him. He's gone home for a couple of hours, come back, and he's staying here for Christmas. Like a lot of the overseas players, that is going to be difficult for them, not being with their families over the next few days. But I was looking back, to knock Michael van Gerwen out of a World Championship in recent years, it does take a big performance. His last 5 defeats, he's averaged over 100 plus, and the players that have beat him have averaged over that 100. Looking at the draw, I think it's going to probably go towards the last 16 quarterfinals before we see maybe someone challenge him to knock him out, and I just can't see it at the moment. If he carries on playing the way he is, I know it's a long break between the two games, but I'm gonna be boring this time. I'm gonna try and play it safe. I'm gonna go with the green man to get over the line and beat Gerwyn Price in the final. That's my new pick. What about you? Are you going to stay the same?
Well, you said something I can't disagree with, that if he keeps playing at the level he did in the first round, he's not going to get beaten, because I don't think I can disagree with that. If he's averaging 109, especially now that we're in best of 7 sets, he's not going to be beaten. Ryan Murray did have a chance to force a 5th set against him, despite the fact he was averaging 109. And who knows what would have happened if he got pushed to a 5th set. But if he's averaging 109, he's not going to be beaten. But I'm not going to go away from my pick. The person who I said would beat him is the Dimitri Van den Bergh-Dave Chisnell winner, and I'm still sticking with Dimitri Van den Bergh to win that match. Dimitri Van den Bergh, okay, he was awful compared to Michael van Gerwen, but he still averaged nearly 106 in whitewashing Paul Lim, because he wasn't awful. He just wasn't at that 109 that Michael Van Gerwen was at. Dimitri Vandenberg played fantastically, and he's had a fantastic year. And Michael Van Gerwen still has buckled under pressure at times, and we'll see if he can lift his game when needed to in a key leg in key moments against the better players. He's done it before. He's a 3-time world champ. He's the world number one for a reason, but he's mucked it up this year multiple times, especially against Simon Whitlock. I'm not yet willing or ready to change my pick off of that brilliant performance. Van Gerwen has every chance, but I still think he'll go out, and he could go out earlier because Johnny Clayton, or Joe Cullen, who's beaten him in a big event this year as well, a weight in the last 16 if Van Gerwen gets that far. Both of them can beat him, especially Clayton has shown it on television, playing lights out against him every time on TV. But I'm still sticking with Gerwen Price in the bottom half, and I'm still sticking with Gerwen Price to win his first world title. And like I said, when I made the pick, to complete the hat trick this year of set play titles.
Now let's cast our minds back to the second day of this World Championship, the first game behind closed doors, and we had a new voice in the commentary box. You asked me, who is that in the commentary box? Well, it is the Sky Sports boxing commentator, Adam Smith, and he joins us now as our next guest on the show. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the Sky Sports commentator, Adam Smith. Thanks for joining us, Adam. How are you doing?
Pleasure. Brilliant. Yeah, really enjoying the Worlds. Obviously gutted that there are no fans, which obviously make it such an incredible showcase. But, obviously with the way that this year has been, the turmoil of it, the most important thing is that everyone stays, healthy and safe over the festive period, etc. And it's sad not to have, that atmosphere, the great sort of turnout we get every day. So that's a real shame. But having sort of worked through all the sort of difficulties on the boxing for the last few months, we're well aware of what we can and can't do. And the show goes on, and I'm absolutely loving being part of a great team.
Definitely. Well, we'll come back to the darts in a moment, but as a budding journalist myself, whenever we have a guest on from the media, I like to start off by finding out about how your career in the industry started. So where did the interest in sports broadcasting come from?
I was probably about 10 years old, 10 or 11, and I used to love all sports, so I was pretty rubbish at playing them, so I used to love watching them. And I had a dictaphone, and I used to turn the TV sets down and commentate in my dictaphone on all sorts of sports, whether it was horse racing or football, cricket, tennis, boxing, anything. I used to drive my folks mad, and I actually kept those dictaphone tapes. It was when my voice hadn't broken, and I used that later on. I always wanted to be a sports commentator, and I went through university. I did sort of theatre and TV at university, and then I went out to work in Washington for a while at CNN. I came back and worked at NBC and ITN on the news desk in London, and then I joined Sky in August 1994 and went straight onto the boxing team. It was one of my passions, and I've been part of that business sort of ever since. I've worked a little bit with football and cricket and others. I've supported the sort of the teams across Sky Sports, but mainly it's been boxing. I've been a reporter, presenter, commentator, and then I was head of boxing for sort of 10 years, and now my current title is the head of boxing development, which means that I strategize the fights with Eddie Hearn, my partner in Matchroom, and work out sort of the best way boxing goes forward on Sky. And I also the commentator for the big fights, and I like to work also with the Sky Scholars. It's a great scheme where we mentor a whole load of sort of young athletes and guide them through a program and do other support. So that's fantastic. And I've just managed to get on to the team at the World. So it's great. I love what I do, and I'm very passionate about it. And it's been a great run.
We were speaking off air before we started this. You're now in your 27th year working for Sky, and you joined it in its early days. So what was it like in those early days working for Sky?
It was a load of fun, but I mean, no one knew sort of who we were, and we were certainly the enemy because everything had been on terrestrial, and we'd signed the Premier League. By the time I got there, I think it was a couple of years. We'd had the football, and we had a bit of rugby league, and we had a bit of boxing. Not much else, and there was probably sort of 45, 50 people working at Sky Sports. There was Sky News, but you look at how it's grown and how it's developed, and you've got everything from Sky One to Sky Broadband to Sky Mobile, and that now sits underneath, of course, the Comcast umbrella, which is NBC, Universal, and Sky. And we went out into Europe. I mean, we weren't on much money, and it was just a dream job, really. We just sort of got on with it. We worked 24/7, and we were in and out of edit suites, and I was voicing pieces very quickly, and because we had the opportunities, I think then. So yeah, it was a brilliant time. It was a fun time. It was we had really good people who'd come from sort of BBC and ITV and were sort of trying something different. But we were the enemy, and certainly on the boxing, we sort of took a lot. Frank Warren came over from ITV and brought his whole stable, and later on we obviously worked with sort of Frank Maloney and Matchroom always all the way through, and they went through sort of peaks and troughs of what they wanted to do with boxing. But I suppose for boxing it wasn't until Eddie Hearn came in and we decided to go with one promoter that we really started to build something special. And I guess maybe that's where the link with the darts comes in, because Matchroom run the darts as well, and we'd seen how it'd gone from a sort of pub atmosphere to a huge sort of alley-pally party. And I think that we wanted with boxing to do the same thing and make sure that everybody was enjoying themselves at the arenas. And we went from leisure centres. Yeah, we had some big fights back in the day, but a lot of the weekly fights were in sort of small halls, and we wanted to sort of make bigger statements. So we got a load of arenas, and of course that led to stadium shows with Foch and Groves at Wembley, and then obviously Anthony Joshua and his fights in stadiums. So it just grew and grew, and and it's been brilliant sort of being a part of it. We've had fantastic people and had a great boxing team. I'm very lucky to have been surrounded by real talent, and we made a difference to boxing, and obviously to the way sport is broadcasted. And it's a huge thing now. It's a massive sort of operation. But yeah, back in the day it was a lot of fun, and we all got our hands dirty on loads of different things, and we had opportunities, and we worked really, really hard.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those big nights that you've been involved in with the boxing, in particular over the last 10 or so years when we've seen it enjoy a real boom period here in the UK. What's it like commentating on those fights, especially those big nights in a previous world, if you like, when we had the 80,000, 100,000 people in the arena all screaming at the same time?
It's incredible, it really is, and I find myself in a very fortunate position. It's something I've always wanted to do. It's something that I never take for granted. I work extremely hard, whether it's a small 4-round fight or whether it's a world title or a heavyweight championship or a superstar like Floyd Mayweather. It doesn't really matter. I try and take every fight the same. Obviously there are levels to the sport, and there's levels to commentary, and sort of when there's a really big fight, obviously you leave something for that. But yeah, it's amazing. I remember walking to Madison Square Garden many years ago, and I got my first world heavyweight title fight to commentate on. It was Vladimir Klitschko against Ibragimov. Actually turned out to be a really dull fight, but I remember walking to the Garden thinking, I'm doing a unified world heavyweight title here. And if someone says to me tomorrow it's all over, I've just achieved such a dream. So it is. It's to do something you absolutely love, to just 6 feet away from ringside, commentating on these wonderful boxers, these great fighters who you get to know, you get to live their journeys, their stories. They're the most accessible sportsmen and sportswomen in any sport, and I'm a mad sports fan across the board. Whether it's football, tennis, snooker, darts, whatever it is. I love sport, but boxing's been fantastic because we've had phenomenal sort of access. The likes of Ricky Hatton and David Hay and Joe Calzaghe and Lennox Lewis, and all these guys over the years, and Amir Khan, Carl Froch, so many great fighters. Anthony Joshua has been, amazing to work with. And then, of course, the women like Katie Taylor, and I mentored Savannah Marshall through 4 years of the scholarship program at Sky. Now she's a world champion, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant to see them grow and to see the success. But yeah, there's nothing like picking up a mic 6 feet from ringside on a huge occasion. It's an amazing experience.
Well, we should talk a little darts as well, shouldn't we? And we've seen you a few times in the crowd at Ali Pali over the last few years. Where did your interest in darts come from? Is it recent, or is it going back a little while?
No, it goes way back to when I was a kid, and I used to watch Eric Bristow and Jockey Wilson and John Lowe and all of those guys, Bobby George. I loved it, and I just think I love sport. I love competition. I love winning and losing, watching, and we've all tried, we've all thrown our darts, and occasionally got the treble 20, but more often sort of peppering the board or away from the board. So it's a fun sport. I've always admired it. It's an individual sport, and I think there's something about darts, boxing, tennis, athletics. There's something about individual individual sports which fascinate me because you're up there on your own, and it's a mental and physical battle. And yeah, so I've loved the darts, and I got to know a few of the players through the years because there's a big link to boxing. They love the sport. Justin Pipe is a big boxing fan. I remember meeting him, and we played, Johnny Nelson and I played some charity darts down at Headley Court, which was fantastic. And I got to meet Chizzy and Steve Beaton and Andy Fordham and Adrian Lewis and all those guys. And I've got a bit of a friendship with Steve Bunting because he's a Liverpool man. He knows a lot of the boxing guys, and Gary Anderson, also a big boxing fan. So Johnny and I and Spencer Oliver have come up to support them. My daughter, my eldest daughter, is mad into the darts. She loves Michael Smith. So, and Phil Taylor obviously was a huge boxing fan, and I admired him as somebody that was just so incredibly consistent, just a pure winner. So, and I think, look, they're all characters as well, and I think that's what the attraction is, but also the fans make it everybody having a cracking night out, especially the Worlds. But I love it. I'll talk to Rory Hopkins, the brilliant producer of the darts at Sky, and he'll tell you, I'm watching everything, whether it's a sort of, something on the floor or whether it's a Premier League Thursday or whatever it is. Whenever I can, I sort of try and tune in and enjoy it. So yeah, I've long been a fan, and that's what I am. I'm no expert, and there's terrific people on the team up here like Wayne Mardle and John Hart and Mark Webster and all the gang, and I'm just a fan. So I often said, look, I'm around if you guys need a hand at the Worlds, and fortunately they said yes, and I've really enjoyed doing a few matches.
Excellent. Well, you mentioned Justin Pipe there. I think it was last year. I remember hearing you in the commentary box for one of his games at the World Championship. Was that the first time that you've done the darts, or have you done it before?
Yeah, it was. I came up with, as I say, Spencer, Oliver, Johnny and I come up most years. I bring my kids as well, and obviously I'm close to Barry and Eddie and the whole matchroom team, so I've enjoyed that. But last year, Georgie Faulkner, who is the director of Multisports, who runs the darts and others, she said to me, look, we want to get some cross collaboration over the sport, and so we're going to bring the cricket team up, we're going to bring the football team up, the boxing team, and so do you want to come up and do a game? And I said, absolutely. So we leapt at it. So Spenny and I came up, and we sat with Nigel and Ron Harrington in the box underneath the studio with the madness, and I landed on a Justin Pipe match, which was fantastic because I knew it. So that was, and although I know people complain about the fact he's very slow, etc., for us it was great because there was a connection, and he won his first round match, and it was great. So I really enjoyed it, and I said, look, if you want Spenny and I to come back this year, and they said, look, we may need to do a bit more of the commentary, so. That's how it happened. So yeah, I really enjoyed it last year, and I'm absolutely loving it this year.
Fast forward 12 months, you're back at Ali Pali, more of a role in the team this year as well. We've seen you do quite a few games so far. So how have you found it so far? Has it been hard preparing for a different sport? What's it been like?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, it's like, and as I said, with boxing, I've known the fighters for many years, and it's very different. But there's a lot of similarities. As I said, the mental and physical battle, the individual sport, and getting to know sort of a bit about them. It's hard in a way because we can't get access to the players physically this year, so we can't sort of go and sort of have 10 minutes. Edward Folks was a good example. No one really knew much about him, and I'm commentating on him again today against Brendan Dolan, and it was like we're trying to scratch around trying to find what we could. But if we'd had 20 minutes to go and have a chat with him, we would have found out obviously huge amounts. So it has been tough that way because you're very much in isolation in the compound. But I'm really lucky. The darts team are fantastic, and the likes of Colin Lloyd, who did my first match, and Wayne Mardle, Keith Beller. I mean, these guys are just laced in history, in darts history, and they know it all. So I've just tried to sort of be a commentator, be a fan, just love it, just get involved, and obviously do some research, but really they're there to be the experts, and I'll call it as I see it, and and have a bit of fun along the way, because it is entertainment, and I think that however serious the Worlds are, it's we've had a really, really tough year, and I think that we need to make sure that the fans that can't get to Ali Pali this time are really enjoying it on television. So I'm passionate about darts, and that's how I want to come across. But I'm no expert, and they are. And I'm doing another match with Laura Turner today, who I think's done a fantastic job coming in as well. And it's brilliant. Mark Webster I've worked with, and Rod Harrington. They're a great bunch, and they've been so welcoming. Honestly, they've been lovely, and they like their boxing same time. But it's different. We're commentating in the TV compound, so it's not quite the same. But you've got to adapt. We've had to adapt in boxing over the last few months with fight camp and then being sort of 10, 12 metres back from ringside with perspex glass. It's different and it's difficult. But and also being socially distanced from your co-commentators is hard because it's a conversation, and so there are difficulties with it. But I'm just, as I said, I've loved every match I've done, and I'm just really grateful that they've given me this opportunity.
Yeah, and we've enjoyed hearing you in the commentary box so far. And I mean, going forward, you mentioned there you're going to be involved in some games today. We're talking on this Tuesday morning. Are we going to hear more for you in darts in commentary going forward? Is that something you'd like to keep being involved in?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've loved it, and that's all I can say. And if they want me back and I can do it, I'd be more than happy to jump at that chance. I didn't think that was how this year was going to end, but I suppose this year has been a year where everybody's been trying sort of different things. I've always thought about whether I should turn my hand to other sports. It was what I would come full circle. It's what I did as a kid, whether it was horse racing or cricket or tennis or whatever. And I'm a massive tennis fan. That's something that I possibly could look towards in the future. But boxing is my business. Boxing is my absolute sort of love, and that is that's never going to change. So, everything has got to work around that. But yeah, I mean, obviously there are some big tournaments, not just the Worlds in darts. As I said, they've got a fantastic group. They've got a wonderful set of talent, brilliant production staff, and they may not need me again because they can do a great job. But if I get a phone call, if they knock again, and I'll be only too pleased to help them out because I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'll be sad to sort of walk away and have to watch it on the television.
And lastly, we can't let you go with one more boxing question, and it is one which everyone is talking about: Anthony Joshua against Tyson Fury this time next year. Do you think we'll have seen him? What's your thinking so far about that?
I think that's a very good guesstimate, actually. I've said to anybody that's asked me over the last few weeks that I think that Fury Joshua will happen in 2021. I'm not quite sure when. I think it depends on a great deal of things. Eddie and Bob Arum and Frank Warren are working really closely to try and make it happen. Plenty has been agreed. I've spoken to both fighters, and they both want it, which is always the key in all of this. We spent too long waiting for Mayweather Pacquiao, didn't we? We could have had 3 of them by the time it happened. So I'm very keen to try and do my bit. I don't make fights, but obviously as part of the big broadcaster, I can often sort of help smooth things and make a sort of couple of calls just to try and sort of help maybe sort of push it towards getting it done. But ultimately, it's not my job to do that. What I do know is that they both talk to me and they both want the fight. So that's really important. The fans want it. The fighters want it. There are hurdles. Obviously, we don't know where COVID is going. We don't know when crowds will be back in full. Maybe we'll have to go to the Middle East. And obviously, the Wilder situation is difficult because the team still believe that they've got Fury next, and then there's who wants to fight Joshua because he's the WBO mandatory. So there are hurdles, as there always are in boxing, which keeps us on our toes. It means we never fully rest on Christmas Day. But I do think that this fight will happen, and I do think it will happen in 2021, and I think it needs to happen. I think it's the fight that stops traffic around the globe. It's a fight that we have to see, and it's a fight hopefully we can get 2 or 3 of them on, because when they're at their peak, that's what you want. And yeah, I'm very hopeful. I can't give you a date, I can't give you 100% guarantee, but I'm pretty hopeful for fight fans that we'll get that fight in 2021.
Fingers crossed for that. Well, thank you very much for your time, Adam. I know it's a busy time for you working on the darts at the minute. Keep up the great work you're doing, and wish you and the family a great Christmas and all the best for next year as well.
Thanks very much. Have a lovely Christmas, and let's hope 2021 is a much better year, and a year where we can get crowds back and fans can come and enjoy the sport that we all love.
Thanks again to Adam for joining us. Now it's time to talk about our sponsor, Lowe 6, who of course present this show. We've had 2 contests so far during this World Championship. The first one, the honours went to you, but an 8-7 win. The second contest, the one that we made our picks for on the last show, well, got a bit of bragging rights back then. Nice 7-3 win for me, and from our listeners as well. We did have 3 of you go a perfect 8 for 8. So shout out to you, Sion Win 180, David Griffin, Pete 13281, all picking up a share of the £100 jackpot courtesy of Lowe 6. So congratulations to those 3. we've got a contest that we're going to be running on Sunday, which is the first day of action back after the Christmas break. We've got 6 third-round games to pick from. On this show, we're going to make our picks for the afternoon games, run through them. You can see the rest of our picks on our Twitter page, but let's get into the picks. First game up, it is Krzysztof Ratajski against Simon Whitlock. How do you see this game going?
Yeah, this is a very tough one to start out. Krzysztof Ratajski, a lot has been said about how he still has not had that big breakthrough in a PDC TV event, but boy, did he look like he was ready in that second round match against Ryan Joyce, averaging over 100 against an informed player who was playing well and couldn't even get a set off him. But Simon Whitlock also averaged over 100 against one of the toughest draws he could have had in Darius Labanauskas and got through in the last set. This match, if they both play like they did in the second round, could be the tie of the round. Even if they drop a little, it still should be a very close, very tight match. But I think Whitlock's experience and hunger just seems to be a little bit higher than it's been for a while right now. And I think he'll get over the line. I'll say 4-2, but it's not a bad way to start after Christmas.
Definitely not. And I'll go the other way then, just to be different, and because at least one of us will be right for this first game, because it is a pick'em, isn't it? You've got the 15th seed going up against the 18th seed. Not a lot in the difference in the rankings at the minute. And both, as you say, played very well in that first game. They both averaged over the 100. Krzysztof Ratajski, I didn't watch his game, but I had a look back through the stats, and first couple of sets against Ryan Joyce, first set in a decider takes out 91, second set an 11 darter to get over the line in the decider. So when he's had to be pushed in those final legs of sets, he's been able to produce the goods so far. And again, same with Simon Whitlock. He was his first 100+ average in a World Championship for 9 years. Just goes to show that he's not finished yet. He's still got a lot to give. One of the checkouts for the tournament so far was hit against him. He was sat on 36 for the match to win 3-1. Big D, Darius Labanauskas, 164 checkout to come back to 2-all. What does Simon Whitlock do? Replies with a 10 darter straight away and cleans up that set pretty quickly. But I'll be different. I'll go with Krzysztof Ratajski. I think this one could go 6-7 sets. Second game up then, it is Kim Huybrechts against my dark horse for the tournament, who is still in, Ryan. So how do you see this game going?
It's another tricky one. I mean, if you look at the stats so far, you would say Kim Huybrechts will steamroll him, but Ryan Searle's a difficult customer. And it's easy to undersell how well he played against Jeffrey Deswan, because his average was under 93, but it was a clinical 93. It was a James Wade-like 93, which is why he was able to beat someone who was averaging almost 100 and beat him to 0. It was a really classy performance. And he showed a little bit of nerve at times against Danny Baggish, especially in that fourth set, which allowed it to go to a fifth set decider. But he easily could have won 3-0. He missed a couple darts to win the second set, but they were well-thrown darts, and Danny Baggish took out a 1-4-8. Otherwise, that would have been a whitewash. It would have been back-to-back whitewashes. Kim Huybrechts, it's going to be tough to maintain that same level that he's been at. But boy, he doesn't have to maintain that same level to still be a top-tier opponent in this match. I'm going to go with your dark horse. I think Ryan Searle is just, I think he's going to irk Kim Huybrechts. And when Kim Huybrechts gets irked, he sometimes buckles. I think Searle will continue to take the right shots at the right time. So I'm going to go for him to get it done. Let's say 4-2 again.
Yeah, I can't back against my dark horse now, so I'm going to go for Ryan Searle as well. But it is another hard one to call, as we say. Kim Huybrechts has been very impressive so far, and he had the 100+ average in his first game. There wasn't much coming back from him, from his opponent, the Chinese qualifier. But the next round there certainly was for me and White. That was a really good game between those two, both averaging over the 100. And this could be a very close one. Ryan Searle, though, I've been very impressed with him. And I think one of the favourite interviews that we've had this year was when we had him on after he won that PDC title, beat Michael van Gerwen in the final. And I remember he was still a little bit in shock that what he was able to do. He was talking about that night he kept waking up and thinking, wow, I've just won a PDC title. But you think to now, the interviews that he comes out with, some of the comments he comes out with, he's a lot more confident now in all of this, the whole PDC setup. And Gary Anderson as well, he's spoken about him multiple times in interviews recently that he's going to be a player to watch. They're both going to be practicing together next year when the restrictions allow, so that's only going to be good for Ryan Searle. But yeah, he's my dark horse before the tournament. I've got to stick with him. Final game then of the afternoon session, it is Dimitri van den Bergh against Jermaine Wattimena. How do you see this game going?
Ooh, Dimitri, Dimitri, wow, that was a performance against Paul Lim. Jermaine Wadamena is a huge win for him because he's been struggling to get over the line on TV, and you saw that in the interview afterwards, where he talked up his game on the floor and talked down it while talking down his game on TV. But that's a very important win for him, and maybe we'll see going against a friend, going against a stablemate, we'll see the best come out of him in that, and that will push Dimitri Vandenberg, because they're on floor form. Jermaine's probably the better player, but Dimitri's one of the best players in the world. He's the world match play champion, and he's even better at the world championships than he is almost anywhere else. It's just going to take you're going to have to see a huge regression or a huge increase from Jermaine Wadamena for him to get over the line in this match, and I don't see him having that right now. So I'm going to go Dimitri. We'll go 4-1, but I do think we'll see a much better performance from Jermaine Wadamena. I could see both of them averaging over 100 in this match.
I think you're right on this one. Yeah, it's the Mac Elkin derby. These two, of course, stablemates, sports management company, and it's going to take something for Dimitri Vandenberg. If he drops down his level, Jermaine comes up. But if you look through the last few years, we've seen Jermaine in some quality contests at Ali Pali, the one with Luke Humphreys, I think it was last year, might have been the year before that, the one that he had with Gary Anderson, and both occasions he's just fallen short. Now, if he is able to push this one close, is he going to be able to get over the line? I'm not quite so sure. I think the quality of Dimitri is going to be the difference here. I've got him going through as well. Guys, if you want to get involved, download the Lowe 6 app. 18 plus, UK residents only. T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org. We do have a £100 prize pot free contest. Winner takes all. So good luck to everyone who enters. We'll be back to let you know how we get on in our picks, but best of luck to everyone playing. And before we finish off the show with a listener question, let's hear from the reigning World Masters champion, John O'Shea. He was part of the MAD launch that we had recently. Our good friend Matthew Kiernan was there, and here's a few minutes that he had with John O'Shea.
Are you all set for Q School?
Yeah, looking forward to Q School. Yeah, hopefully this time around.
And what do you make of the format, if you've had time to digest that was released?
I'll be honest with you, I had a quick look at it last night and it's a bit confusing. So Paul will have a look at it and he'll just go over it with us as regards to what we're doing, But look, at the end of the day, it is what it is. The PDC are going to come up with they had to come up with something different because Q School couldn't keep going the way it was going, and especially now with COVID and all the limitations that we are at with darts. If you're good enough, you're going to keep going on to the finals day. If not, then that's it. You know what I mean? So we'll just keep. I can only play the game in front of me at any given time. So I'll just keep playing until I can, until I'm beaten. And that's the way I look at it. I don't look at it at 3 days of qualifying to qualify for Q School. I see it as a dart match. I'll play the dart match and I'll move on to the next dart match, and I won't think any further than the first game. There's no point in saying, if I get this far, I'm in the finals for the last 4 days. I won't think like that, because Q School is a minefield. There are a lot of untapped talent at Q School, and I've seen it firsthand myself. Guys that nobody knows anything about, putting their hat in the ring these fellas can play darts, and just because nobody knows him, it doesn't mean that he should be just brushed aside. It doesn't work like that, not with me anyway.
Thanks again to John for joining us, and if you want to listen to more chats that Matt had during the MAD launch, he also spoke to Wayne Warren, Paul Hogan, Daryl Fitton. Go and check them out. I believe they're on his YouTube channel. Just go and search The Darting Nerd. Before we get into this listener question, great idea that Burton just had off air. The 3 people that did get 8 out of 8 in our last contest, if they go 6 out of 6, we'll get you on the show to give your picks for our next contest. So a little bit of a incentive there for you guys to do well again. But let's get into our listener question that we've got, and thanks everyone who sends in our question. It comes from our good friend of the show, Gordon Skinner, who says, on the weight of the last game yesterday, the Jason Lowe, Michael Smith game, when we're talking and the other seeds that are out, does this underline the fact there are no easy games in the PDC, or does it show the rankings are wide of the mark, or is it the lack of crowds impacting performance? Over to you.
I think a little bit of all three comes in, but at the same time, Michael Smith didn't play like the world number 4 in that match, and he hasn't played like the world number 4 most of this year, but he still played like a top 12 player most of the time, and he didn't play poorly in that match. It's just that Jason Lowe was brilliant, and Jason Lowe, because it's a 2-year ranking and it's only on his first year of his tour card, doesn't have an accurate ranking. And those are the players who the rankings are most out of whack for. The players who are just starting in their first year and a half, especially before their first World Championship, before they get that first huge influx of money that starts driving them up. At the same time, 26 of the 32 seeds went through, which shows that by and large, the players in the top 32 are the 32 best players. But the depth is there that anyone can win on any given day. I think that does underline, as Gordon said, the fact that there are no easy games in the PDC. And even though 26 of the seeds won, many of them were pushed. Even like we mentioned, Simon Whitlock had to go to a last set against Darius Labanauskas despite averaging over 100. I think the lack of a crowd also impacted performance. You saw Michael Smith in that match kept yelling at himself, and I don't think he would have done that with the crowd. I think the crowd could have lifted him on its own, and that could have made a difference. But at the same time, there are players who I think are playing better with the lack of a crowd. So it's tough. I think all of those factors have impacted players in different ways. As Gordon said, there are no easy games in the PDC, but I think the rankings overall are a good indicator. There are outliers. There are players who are playing above their ranking. There are players who are playing below their ranking. There always will be. There will always be in any sport. Novak Djokovic was still world number 1 4 or 5 years ago when he was really struggling. He was also world number 9 a year and a half ago when he was starting to play brilliantly again. So the rankings will, in any sport, not always be 100% indicative, but I think they're a fairly good indicator overall.
Yeah, I mean, starting with the rankings, as we know, with the PDC, it is that rolling 2-year order of merit. So when you do have players come through Q School, it can take them a lot of time to maybe work out where they should be in the rankings, and you've only got to look at the players start of this year that won their tour cards at Q School. You've got 4 players that have made it into that top 64 less than 12 months into their tour card. You've got Dirk van Dijvenbode, Damon Heta, Adam Hunt, Jason Lowe, that the 4th one. Martijn Kleermaker probably should be in there as well, but unfortunately, as we know now, he tested positive for the virus, so we had to pull out of his first round game, and we do wish him all the best. But if he was able to play, probably expect him to win that first round game, and I think that would have been enough to get him in the top 64. And the way that Danny Noppert performed, if he'd have performed like that, we could still be talking about Martijn Kleermaker being in the tournament. So he's one as well. A few others as well that we've seen perform well at the World Championship: Scott Waits, Jeff Smith, Ryan Murray. As far as class of Q schools go over the years, 2020 has been a very good year, and it shows that the strength in depth is increasing all the time. And we spoke about the new Q school rules. That should help it next year with more quality coming through when the players are getting the better players, if you like, or the ones with more pedigree are getting pushed into that second stage. They get closer to the finishing line. But lack of crowds, I think, is definitely a factor. And when we spoke to Glenn Durrant, I think it was just before the Premier League got underway again, and it was going to be behind closed doors. He was top of the table, and a word that he used was adapt. And that is what the players have got to do in these circumstances. And I know it's difficult. A lot of the players, what we've seen with the PDC the last 10 or 15 years, the crowds have been a big part. And to go from thousands of fans to no fans at all, it is a big change. And you've only got to look at Adrian Lewis. He came on Twitter after his defeat to Danny Baggish, and he said it didn't feel like a world championship. And that is a player that has, of course, won it a couple of times. He's been right at the top of the game. Was he using it as an excuse? I don't know. But we're going to see it over the next few weeks. If the players are able to adapt and put in those performances that we know they're capable of, then they could go far. But yeah, I think we're seeing strength and depth definitely getting better. Lack of crowds, it's all a factor, and it all makes for what you said at the top of the show, a very different World Championship than what we're used to.
Anything else for this week?
As always, got to say a big thank you to our guests for joining us. Really appreciate them for coming on, and I hope everyone, all of our listeners, enjoy the holidays and the festivities. I know it's going to be a difficult time for a lot of people with the restrictions, if they're in the same restrictions that I'm in with the Tier 4 in the UK, but I guess everyone around the world, if wherever you're listening to this show, that's going to be a difficult time. So if we're able to offer you a bit of entertainment for an hour or so, however long this show goes on for, then hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoy the rest of the World Championship. I think we might try and get a show in between the last 16 and the quarterfinals. So if we do, we'll chat to you then. But yeah, enjoy the darts when it comes back, and hope you guys all have a nice Christmas.
Yes, indeed. I hope everyone has a fantastic, or as fantastic as possible, Christmas, and I guess New Year's as well. I hope you guys enjoy the last 31 matches of the World Championship, and seeing that I will be correct yet again on at least one of the finalists for the 4th in a row, because I always am. But yeah, Happy holidays to everyone. Thanks to our guests, our sponsors, our listeners. And season 4 or series 4 of this show is almost over. We start series 5 and get closer to episode 200. Have to bring out the quadro boards to get a 200. I guess you could do a 200 checkout on the quadro board. Quadruple 20 tops. But we'll be back next week. Until then, well, you'll have to hang tight for a few days, but then you can let loose, as you always do during the World Championships.